Everybody, and welcome back to Principles of Tourism. I think that's what class this is. You have to forgive me. This is a third lecture I've recorded back to back today, and my brain is getting a little mushy and my voice is getting a little scratchy. So this is my favorite chapter in the whole book. I like talking about cultural tourism. I like talking about a lot of these things, but this is my favorite. One of the reasons that this is my favorite is because, one, no matter what you say, in a lot of ways you can't be wrong. So I'm going to talk about tourism's future. Now, I say you can't be wrong. There's also no guarantee you're going to be right. And I was just talking with Heather or Hannah about that in this book. A lot of it talks about what it's going to be like in 2020. Well, I don't think they mention anything about the way it actually turned out in 2020 in the book. So when we talk about the future, one thing that's important to keep in mind is this is based on trends. This is based on things we see in the market. This is based on where people think technology is going. And smart people are making their best bet of what they think this will be. But I can guarantee you a lot of this isn't going to come to pass. Some of it is, and then some things we don't think about are going to happen also. So this is just to kind of try and open your mind about just the idea that things are going to change in your career. What you think of as tourism is going to be different from what it is now. And you need to be flexible and ready to deal with that. I've got a little quote here from JFK. But I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. So tourism, the outlook generally looks good. Now, 2020 has been a heck of a year. And I'm just going to stick to talking about tourism because you can't travel much. You can't fly much. You can't go places. You can't go out to eat. You can't go to theme parks. There are lots of can'ts in 2020. So as it stands, we are poised for an expansion in tourism, and I'll talk about some of the trends that are promoting this. The projections look good about what's likely to happen in the future, but there's always uncertainty. So I'm going to go through some of the uncertainty in the past or that we've had to deal with. So like climate change presents uncertainty. And one of the things I'll talk about with climate change is like if you're Venice is on the water. It is in a bay. If the water goes any higher, the city sinks. Now that, Venice, Italy is largely driven by tourism dollars. But for other places like the Marshall Islands, which have an average 1 foot elevation above sea level, a foot of sea level rise puts them underwater. The Marshall Islands disappear. They're gone forever. So when we talk about climate change, these are the types of issues we want. We talk about climate change and unpredictable weather, that you're going to have longer, more intense hurricane seasons. So if you look at, they've gone through the entire alphabet of tropical storms in 2020. We've had 26 tropical storms. They started back in the alphabet. That's crazy. Other things that, that tourism and travel was looking good, but when 9/11 happened, this actually bankrupted a number of airlines because they had to stop flying for a while. And so things like that could happen. SARS was a communicable respiratory disease that caused a lot of travel disruption in the early 2000s. I can't imagine anything like that happening now, but so these things occur. In 2011, we had the tsunami hit Japan, and this caused again a big disruption. So things look good, but also keep in mind periodically things are going to happen that we're going to have to respond to. We're going to have a volcano erupt. We're going to have a storm. We're going to have a collapse. We're just going to, and the thing is that even when that happens, even the tsunami in 2011, that was, that's a problem in limited travel, but it also created, people now travel there to see it. There's a whole TV show on Netflix about Chernobyl, that people, Chernobyl is this big environmental disaster with the meltdown at a nuclear power plant, but now it's a tourist destination. So it's hard to be super accurate in your predictions of what's going to happen. Now, this chart, this is like I said, this book was written in 2012. So they're projecting out what it's going to be like in 2020. And actually the numbers in 2019 were ahead of projections. I am be very curious to see what the actual numbers in 2020 are going to be like. But what you see is just more and more people traveling from different places. And if you look at some of the numbers like East Asia, the numbers have almost quadrupled, almost 4 times bigger. Traveled for the Americas doubled. Travel for Africa tripled. So these numbers are, the growth is the projected growth has just been amazing. And this has gotten us to the situation where we are now, is that we're starting to see kind of secondary levels of tourism happen, because a lot of the main levels are, for lack of a better term, are full. You know, that if you want to go to Disney World, pretty much you're going to be standing in line now. There are very few slow weeks or slow weekends to hit it. So what we're projected to see, increased international tourism will continue to boom. They were projecting 1.6 in 2020. I have no idea what that number actually, no one knows what that number is actually going to turn out to be. But the average growth for tourist arrivals internationally in the United States has been 4%. So that's 4% every year. Every year you're getting 4% bigger. So that's pretty tremendous. So, you know, one of the things I talked about is that the tourism we have now is filling the spaces we have. Disney World is full, Venice is full, Paris is full. So what we're starting to see, what is really interesting, is some new destinations are starting to pop up. Places like China. So Hannah, is there anywhere in the world you would like to visit if you were given the chance? Like some remote place that you would like to see?
I've always been interested in the Asia side of things. I know that's not a really high traveled place, but I know a couple people who have been.
Yeah.
I don't remember what areas they went to, and that's something I've always kind of had in the back of my mind as a travel destination, just out of curiosity, because
Well,
it's not a.
Those places are actually popping up. So China is becoming a bigger destination. Vietnam is a big destination. Yeah. Vietnam's is a beautiful country. The Mekong River area, and these are, which is like Southeast Asia, these are becoming more common tourist destinations. The Middle East even is has potential for growth, and is seeing it. Now, you know, politically, this is a hard one to sell sometimes, but if you look at, you know, one of the things I encourage, I've got a link here in the slide, click the link, and you'll see how beautiful and mountainous some of the areas are. And so these areas, they haven't been developed yet. Like people, like we think about, oh, I'm going to go to Yellowstone. Oh, I'm going to go to Yosemite. You know, we don't think about that we're going to go to Karachi. You know, that's but they have the potential. They have the natural resources to make it happen. Same for Eastern Europe. You know, if you want to see a fairy tale castle, go to Eastern Europe. I mean, Cinderella's castle, that's where, you know, that's what it looks like in many of these areas. So that, you know, there are a lot of new destinations that are popping up. There are a lot of places, people are coming from new places. So, you know, economic power in Asia is growing. So we have more Chinese tourists, more Korean tourists, more Indian tourists, more Malaysian tourists. Because as they enter the middle class, travel is the thing you want to do. When you have money, travel, you know, see the world. Countries like Brazil, Indonesia, and even Mexico, these people are traveling from these countries more. We're getting more of them coming. Let's see. So some of the trends or the determinants for tourism going forward, we have tended to have, up until this year, we had moderate to good rates of economic growth. We will see how that plays out as, you know, when COVID is under control. I expect there will, at least initially, there's going to be a rebound because as everyone has been stuck at home, so to speak, when you get the chance to go somewhere, you're going to go.
Everyone's going to want to go.
I know for me personally that for my 25th wedding anniversary, I had planned to take my wife to Paris, and instead we sat in our living room, you know? And so, like, given the chance to travel,
right.
I'm going to travel. So I am anticipating there will be a rebound. What are called the BRIC countries, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China. These are the emerging economic powerhouse countries. We're seeing growth in their middle classes. These are going, these will be bigger players in the future. One of the things that we do see is the gap between the rich and poor is getting bigger. There's polarization. And so we're getting more wealthy countries, but we're also getting more really poor countries. And so that comes with its own set of challenges. If you want to create political instability, what you do is have very wealthy people next to very poor people, and someone's going to be dissatisfied in that arrangement. Let's see, technology is going to continue to be a major player. And one of the things, is that we will see probably more in the future is going to be virtual tourism, where I can create virtual reality experiences. Some of these are like going places instead. Like I'm going to do this virtual experience instead of going somewhere else. But this also shows up in other things, like on cruise ships. Have you ever been on a cruise ship, Hannah?
I have not. We were actually supposed to go on a cruise this past August, but everything was canceled because of COVID. So,
yeah. So did you, who were you going with?
I was going with my boyfriend and another couple and their parents.
So have you already booked your cabin when it was canceled?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of cabin did you select?
So we had I forget what it's called, I guess it's called mid deck. And we had just the basic, not the one with the window, I forget what it was called, the inner cabin, I guess.
So you had the one facing inside.
Yes.
Why didn't you pick the one with the window facing outside?
Well, it was more expensive.
There you go. It's more expensive, but that's the one that everybody wants. Everybody wants to see out. So this is one of those areas where technology is happening. Some of the new big Oasis cruise ships actually have virtual windows. So what they have is cameras that are on the outside of the boat, and you have what looks like a window on the inside, but it's actually a screen. And so it's showing you the ocean as it goes by. It's got, it looks like a window.
Interesting.
But
they can sell more window rooms without actually having to have window rooms.
Exactly.
Cool.
And so that technology, it's going to show up in all sorts of ways. Technology is going to be, and I'll talk about this in some of the later slides, but technology is just going to change the way we do tourism. Now, the political one, this one is hard to read because when the book was written, there was a lot of push towards removing barriers to travel, making it easier to travel. So within Europe, we had the European Union, with the United States, we're entering all sorts of trade agreements, making it easier. Then, since the book was written, a lot of that is reversed, like England voting to leave the European Union, the Brexit thing, which actually creates more barriers to travel. And then right now we have restrictions on travel because of pandemic. So the trend has been to make it easier to travel internationally. Right now we're in kind of an unusual period. Demographic changes. So two of these that show up right here that are kind of interesting. Aging population. So the population is getting older, just people live longer. You still retire at about the same age. So if you retire at 65 and you're healthy to 85, what do you do for 20 years?
Travel.
Yeah, so that tourism is continuing to, so as the population ages, we will actually see an increase in, as we have people staying healthier longer, we'll actually see more travel. And then another one is down here, the erosion of the traditional Western household. Now, I think this sounds a little more inflammatory than what it really reflects. But what this means is people getting married and not having kids, perhaps. I had planned, I don't know what, when I was younger, my wife and I for 10 years were what were called DINKs, D-I-N-K-S, dual income, no kids. We got married, but we didn't have kids. And so in the eyes of, traditionally what household has been, not having kids, that's a change. And so one of the things, though, that allowed us to travel more. If you don't have kids, you can travel more. As things like domestic partnerships become more common, or gay marriage, again, this is changing the makeup of who's traveling. Also, We don't have situations where we have multi-generational households commonly in the West. We don't have someone with a newborn who's married and has their elderly parents living with them. And so again, this changes who, the profile of who's traveling. So as you have people with no kids, they're able to travel. If you have older people who are healthy, they're able to travel. So there's lots of changes going on in the makeup of the household. Globalization, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in later slides because there's a lot. This is a complicated topic, but it shows up in a lot of ways. One is, so with the European Union, one of the advantages of the European Union was they have a single currency, that you could travel from Italy to Germany to France to Poland, and everywhere you went, you didn't have to trade your money. You used the euro everywhere. That's fantastic. That makes travel so much easier.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have a passport. You could just get on a train in Italy and get off the train in Germany, and you just, that makes travel easier. If you don't have to have a passport, if you don't have to have a visa, it's just easier. So that's globalization has been a big trend and will probably continue to be. Localization. This is that while we have globalization, everyone's making it easier to travel. There's also this kind of emphasis on my place is special and I want to protect it and keep it the way it is. And so that continues as well. Let's see. The socio-environmental awareness, more people are aware of the impact of travel has on the environment, or they're going to, like, this year wasn't too bad with Frat Beach, but have you ever seen any of the pictures for cleanup from Frat Beach, what it looks like after people come?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And I know a lot of it before it even gets picked up, gets washed out. I mean, or gets thrown in the water with that,
Yep.
Before it's even.
And what is it? What are we talking about? What's on the beach?
Beer cans, plastic. I've seen those styrofoam coolers,
red
like the
Solo cups.
trash ones, Solo cups. Yeah.
And you know what we see on the, you know what we see now? Face masks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen those a lot too. That's right. You're right.
Yeah. So there's more awareness. There's more awareness of those issues, and so a lot of people want less environmental impact when they travel. This is one of the things that actually cruise ships get a lot of heat for. Is they're mass polluters. They put out huge amounts of airborne particulate pollution. Let's see. One of the things that for hospitality, we're particularly well poised for this, is the change from service to experience. So the thing, as the world it gets smaller, everybody's able to travel more, things kind of become more the same. Like if I were to take you, Hannah, and put you in a McDonald's in Tucson, Arizona, and you're facing the counter, or I put you in one in Atlanta, could you tell the difference from where you were standing?
No.
Probably not. And so the service may be good, but the experience is, you're not
anywhere.
Yeah, it's not a special experience. So what we're selling, what people want is the experience. You go somewhere because it has this thing you can do. I want to go to Hawaii so I can go to a luau. Yeah, I could cook a pig in the ground here, but it's not the same as going there. I want to go to China so I can eat real dumplings that I buy from a street vendor. That is part of the experience. I want to go somewhere so that I can haggle with a vendor on the street. That's part of the experience. And so what we sell are experiences. So I'm going to talk about these 5 trends real quickly now. Just weigh in if you have anything. So globalization, like I talked about, political, social, environment and changes. I've touched on some of these already. So right here it says BRIC, the BRIC. That's Brazil, Russia, India, and China. These are the emerging nations. These are kind of like, the United States is a wealthy nation. The European Union, mostly wealthy nations. These are nations that are emerging and getting there. That they're not third world nations. They're somewhere in that inner space. Then we have some political changes. So in the early 2010s, we had this eruption of democracy. We have oppressive regimes falling all over the world. This was a common theme. So travel opened up. And then since then, in 2016 and since, we've had an eruption of nationalism, where we have more of my national identity is more important than it was before, or more people are voting that way. And so it's very, we're in an interesting time where we have two conflicting trends that are happening at the same time. So we have democracy is growing, my country is number one is growing. And so we have some conflict, or not conflict, but we just have, it's hard to understand what the future is going to hold. This is a very interesting trend. One of the things that's neat that's happening is what's called resident responsive tourism. And I think I mentioned this in an earlier chapter, but this is people in the local community are getting involved. And so if you travel, so imagine, Hannah, you said you wanted to go to China, or you wanted to go to Asia. So let's say that you were able to go to Vietnam. You're staying in a hotel, but while you're there, a local person offers to be your guide, and they speak English, and they'll take you to where the good restaurants are, and they'll show you the local theater, and they'll show you the things that real Vietnamese people do. Would you be interested in that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I want to see what what their points are. Just like with us, if someone asked me if someone was coming in to visit Brunswick and was like, where should I go? I'd be able to tell them the things that we experience on the daily. So I want that from someone, from a citizen, someone who, knows where all those things are. That'd be really cool. I really like that.
If you want the authentic Brunswick experience, go eat Twin Oaks. It's like,
yeah.
And so that's that's okay. Resident responsive tourism, that's what it is. Where regular people are getting more involved in the process to provide those experiences. Now, this is one where we get that conflict. So the European Union was this union of these 27 countries where you could travel freely, and they all had the same currency. And then Britain voted to remove themselves. They still haven't been able to do it. But there were a lot of, the upside to this arrangement was that you could travel to any of these countries without a visa, without a passport. They all had the same the currency. If you were a resident of one, you could get medical care in the other. You could go to college in the other, because for the most part, all these countries have free higher education. So if you were a college student in the UK, you could go to Germany to school if you wanted, and you could just travel. But with with Britain removing themselves from that, that they are no longer part of that, which has created some interesting situations, because Ireland still is part of it. So literally next to England, where they also speak English, Ireland is actually not. It's still in the European Union. So the European Union has as much economic power as China or as the United States. It's a big, powerful group of nations that have banded together for economic power. So the direction this goes, if more countries remove themselves, or if England goes back in, this will be a trend worth watching. Another idea that's really interesting is what's called the decline of the nation. So if you said that you'd like to go to Asia, is there anywhere in particular in Asia you'd like to see?
Not specifically. The more I keep hearing about Vietnam, though, that might be cool. I just always thought about that area as a travel destination. You know what I mean? As something different or something.
I'm just biased for Vietnam because, one, it's really pretty, and two, the food is really good. It used to be a French colony, so their food is a mixture of French and like more Asian influences. So it's very, very delicious.
Cool.
It's delicious.
I need to go there then.
But what we're saying with this decline of the nation is, like, people aren't saying, well, I want to go to America. They're going, I'm going to go to New York. Or they're not saying, I'm going to go visit France. It's like, I'm going to go to Paris.
Right.
I'm not going to go to Italy. I'm going to Florence. And so what you get are these very powerful cities that are the destination. You know, there are some of those that people want to go see, like Mexico City. A lot of people want to go see Mexico. They have less interest in seeing the rest of Mexico. They want to go see Mexico City. They don't have as much interest in the rest of Mexico. Another trend that's kind of important is that we have lots of economic partnerships that allow for free travel. Like I've said, the European Union allows it, but there are others like the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a trade organization that allows free trade between these countries and eased travel. So any country that's on that borders the Pacific is part of this, or all these are at least. So we'll talk about some economic trends. And again, these we're just looking at the future of tourism and what might play out. Some of these are going to have an effect. Some are going to change and won't have an effect, and we don't know. So one is political pressure for a higher standard of living. This is a real one, and actually tourism makes this one worse, because when someone comes to your country or to your community and they have much more resources than you do, they are obviously more wealthy than you are, it makes you aware of the disparity. And so that creates the pressure for a higher standard of living. We have a move towards coordinating economies to get like with multiple nations working together. Again, this is likely, the goal is to make things smoother and more stable. We tend to have been deregulating international trade, although there are still trade disputes. But generally what we want to do is make the trade between nations for goods as inexpensive and as smooth as possible. Let's see, more technology plays an ever increasing role, and then private sectors are getting bigger. So before we started recording, you had mentioned to me that you were interested in this space tourism thing.
Yeah.
And now what's interesting about that is it's not NASA that's doing space tourism. It's private companies like SpaceX and Virgin Galactic. And so those are private sector players. And so that sort of thing is becoming bigger, that we're having, instead of like the government dictating things, private sectors are playing an increasing role. Let's see. So some other trends about travel, the big one, leisure travel is going to continue to be the dominant one. Just people travel, but we are tending to get shorter vacations now. So instead of, and I think part of this has to do with the changing family makeup, that if you have one person who earns the money and say the other person is a stay-at-home parent, whatever the earner is, whatever their schedule is, that's when you go on vacation. But now if you have two people working, like you work and your boyfriend both work, right?
Yes.
So scheduling time to do something is harder.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Because you have two schedules you have to play with.
Right.
So what we're getting now are shorter vacations that happen more often. That's just a trend because it's easier to schedule. The move towards more things online, like apps and online reservations, is just the future of the world. And this, the SMEs, these are small businesses basically. And again, tourism is largely made up of small businesses, so they continue to play a role. I think I've talked about this a great deal already, about the political trends are basically the increase between have and have not creates tension, and that's going to be an issue that has to be dealt with. The move towards universal education, again, the more people learn, the more they want to travel. The more money they make, the more they want to travel. It all kind of goes hand in hand. Some environmental issues. So right here we have a picture. This is Venice. And so what's wrong with this picture, Hannah?
A little flooded.
It's a little flooded, and this is becoming more and more common. So I've got two links here in this slide. The one where it says Sinking Islands, this is a short documentary, I think about 20 minutes, about the Marshall Islands. So this is a country that is possible that in the next 20 years is going to disappear from the map.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be underwater. It's going to be, the people who live there, their country is going to be gone. So it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to watch. Now, the second link here is, if you want to, and the slides will be up on V2L. if you click this one, it is about Venice and how they're controlling the flooding. So Venice is actually built in a bay. So what they have built or are building are giant underground doors, essentially, that when a high tide is coming, it's going to flood. The doors come up and close the bay.
Oh.
So they're building mobile seawalls that essentially block the water from coming in because they can't raise the city.
Right.
Yeah. As times get warmer, we're probably going to see a decrease in summer trips. This is just one of those things. Now, curiously enough, last year, for the first time in recorded history, the polar ice cap in the Arctic melted completely, and it was possible to travel via the North Pole from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. This in no point in human history has this been possible.
Right.
So what the response to that was cruise ships started making that cruise. It's like you can see something no one else has ever seen.
Right. There goes that unique experience again. I mean, that's something nobody else is,
Yeah, exactly. Another thing we're going to see are cost increases, just because as more people are using things, the natural way to deal with it is we charge more as demand increases.
Yeah.
Carbon taxes.
Higher prices.
Yeah. Carbon taxes are a thing. Basically, all the things that we do that generate pollution come at a cost. So one of the ways that we try and limit pollution is basically, if you're going to pollute, you got to pay more taxes to do it. This is a trend, that's happening. Another thing, we're going to see people paying more for these unspoiled experiences. Like going to the beach. I go to the beach, and if the beach is covered in plastic cups and beer bottles, yay, I'm still at the beach, but it's not great. But getting to go to somewhere like Cumberland Island or Little St. Simons, these unspoiled places are going to become more expensive.
Cumberland's pretty. I've been there.
Yeah, and
it's quiet and not trashy.
And that's the thing. And people, that's when you go to the beach, that's what you want. You want that experience. And a lot of people want it. So how do we do it? We're going to raise prices so that we can maintain it. And sustainability is just going to be an even more important part of tourism. And what I mean by sustainability is, I'm not saying that we can't have tourism, but I'm just saying we shouldn't destroy the resources in this generation, so that people my age shouldn't be using up the resources. I shouldn't be cutting down the trees or polluting the marshes or whatever, and then leave you nothing to work with. Right. So that's all I mean with sustainability, is that leave it as good as you found it.
Right.
I talked about climate change a little bit. The things we see, higher temperatures, that leads to the Arctic melt. The sea level rise is kind of a concern for us here, as we are the highest point on St. Simon's Island. You know how high it is, Hannah?
No, I don't.
14 feet.
Really?
Yeah. The highest point above sea level is the airport, and it's 14 feet above sea level.
Gotcha.
And if you're down there by the crab trap or on East Beach, you're 2 feet above sea level. So if we're talking about an 18-inch sea level rise, that is
take out an area.
Yeah. Along the same lines as temperatures rise, we're seeing decreases in snow cover. So in Glacier National Park, which is named Glacier National Park, there are no glaciers. They melted.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So
need a new name.
Yeah, we're gonna need a new name. So and we get some other environmental trends, like we get invasive species or we get species loss. And so these are just some of the trends and things that we have to deal with. More you than me, because I'm getting close to retirement age, and they're not going to be my problems. They're going to be the problems of people your age. People my age created them. You get to solve them.
Right. Hey.
Yay. Seems fair, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Technology. This is kind of interesting. Less interaction and more human touch. So, and this is things like the way that we're going to check into hotels or get into hotels, we're going to use our phone. Use our phone, an app to reserve it. Then the phone will be the key. If we have to talk to the concierge, we'll use our phone. But again, we want human connection and human experiences. So those human experiences are going to be more important when they do occur. They're probably going to be more rare, but they're going to be more important. Another trend is biometrics, which are things like to check in your hotel room, you will probably do things like either use your thumbprint or your eye scan or a voice scan. Those are biometrics. Another one that's interesting, if you want to click and watch the video, is service robots. And so this is a hotel in Japan that is entirely operated by robots.
Wow.
Now, you can say that sounds kind of weird, but there's some ways where this shows up even now. I've seen it in hotels. One, you don't have, for some hotels, you never have to see the front desk. You can check in on your phone and use your phone as a key. And then you pay on your phone. So that's fine. But some hotels are now using what looks like, it's basically a Roomba with a box on the top. And so like if you're in your room and you need an extra towel, they put it in the machine, program the room, and it just drives it there. And then it'll text your phone when it arrives at the door. And you just go out there and you pull your pillow out or your towel, and then your extra towel. And so you don't have to pay anyone to be a bellman. So we're going to see more of those things. Some for like cleaning to some extent. They do make them that'll make beds, which seems complicated to me, but they're really useful for things like delivering room service or delivering luggage.
That makes sense. Then you don't have to try to get a hold of a person. I mean, if you place an order on technologically, then it's sent to you and it keeps that, job from having to be staffed, really.
Yeah. And as a customer, I don't have to tip.
Correct. Yeah.
And they never need a day off.
True.
They don't need a smoke break.
Right.
So here are some things, future tourism. This has more to do with like travel. So I've got some things in here. There is a move to create tourism in space. If you're super wealthy, you can already go up to the International Space Station. It costs about $20 million, but Russia will fly you up there. I don't have $20 million for a weekend, but if I could afford it, I guarantee you I would do that.
Yeah.
Right here, the Lunatic Hotel. This is a hotel that is being proposed to be built in orbit. So again, this is space tourism is a coming thing. Virgin Galactic, which is just like Virgin Mobile, same company that owns Virgin Mobile and those companies, they're looking at space travel. SpaceX is looking at space travel. So these, this is out there. I don't know what form it's going to take, but it's out there. I've already talked about sustainability, but I'll just say a few things out there that are worth considering. We've got the impacts of global warming. We have what's called peak oil. So do you know what peak oil is, Hannah?
I do not.
When you hear a commodity being talked about it being at its peak, what that means is that we are pumping out or we're producing as much as we can make. So there is
can't make any more than we are.
Yeah, there's only a certain amount of oil in the ground we can pump out. And if it's 1 million barrels a year, then it's 1 million barrels a year, and that's it. The problem is the population is increasing, the demand is increasing. And
but
so
the supply is not.
The supply is not.
Resource.
Yeah, and so prices are going to go up.
Gotcha.
And become unstable. So that's one of those things that, if you are an airline or you're a cruise ship, how do you respond to that?
Go up on your prices.
Yeah, and you're going to have to pass that on. And so there are going to be impacts for those sort of concerns in tourism. Now there's some, peak oil, that worries me a little. But the ones that really upset me is we're also at peak chocolate or near peak chocolate. The world is producing as much chocolate as it can. Right. Which means chocolate prices are going to go up. And that I find particularly worrying.
Someone was talking about that. I forget who, but I do remember that kind of conversation. The chocolate one. Doesn't bother me quite as much, but I could see where it would.
Well,
You're a chocolate lover.
The environments that grow chocolate also grow coffee, and so we're nearing peak coffee.
See, that I would have a problem with, because I have a coffee drinker.
Yeah, your morning cup of coffee is going to go up to like $8 or $10.
Yikes! I'm gonna need a better job for that.
So we're looking along those lines. We're looking at energy savings to try and prevent this. What can we do? And so there are moves towards different types of sustainable architecture. Now, this picture I have here is a proposed hotel. It's fascinating. What they've done is they've actually built the hotel into the side of this cliff. That's what they're planning to do. And so what happens is the ground, if you've ever dug a hole in the ground stays about, once you get about 6 feet down, the temperature stays constant pretty much year round. It's about 75 degrees. And so by doing that, building it into the ground like that, they've eliminated the variation in temperature. And so you don't have to pay for heat, you don't have to pay as much for air conditioning.
It just maintains itself because it's so deep in the ground.
So there are lots of sustainable architecture. Things are going to change in the future, and in hotels, we'll see that. We'll see different types of ways of building them to change their environmental impact. Let's see. Some of the things on this slide that are kind of interesting or worth mentioning is, I've talked about like families are changing. So one of the trends that I've seen in my lifetime with this families are changing is as more women travel and more women travel independently, without, you don't need a man to travel at all. You don't. But that's changed the industry. It's changed how we build hotels. We don't build hotels anymore with doors on the outside, because like no woman wants to go to a dark parking lot in the back of the building to go into her hotel room. It's not wise. And so we've changed the way we build hotels. So the doors are on the inside now. You have a hallway. And so there will be changes like that that show up. And I've talked about people are living longer. That's going to change things like how we do business. As people live longer and live with health problems, we're going to have diabetes will be a bigger issue. Accessibility will be a bigger issue. How, for people who have poor mobility, how are we going to design our facilities to accommodate them? Because there's going to be more of them. And we're going to want to do it, and this ties into number 3, because, you can say, well, what does it matter if some old person can't get up the stairs? Yeah, but if there's 1 million of them or 20 million of them, that's a big market to take advantage of. So here are some social trends that we're looking at in the future. Aging population, urbanization. People are moving away from the countryside and into cities. And if you haven't noticed, I'm not going to get into politics here, but if you watch the political maps during the election, it's not, the red and blue is not as much Republican Democratic as it is city and country.
Area. Yeah, exactly. And I even noticed that, and I don't usually watch that map, but I was looking, I was like, it's kind of depends on if it's city or country. It's not really like red or blue.
Yeah.
All the cities were kind of the same, and all the country was kind of the same, like around the outside of the state. So it's kind of interesting.
And so so these trends of more people are moving to the cities in the country, in the open areas of the country are becoming relatively less populated. Small cities are dying. This changes, this just changes the way that society operates and lives. Let's see, what else in here? I think I've talked about most of these already. Oh, so here's one, 2 trends that happen at the same time. We have materialism. We buy stuff because it makes us happy. So Hannah, do you know anyone who goes shopping on Black Friday?
Yes, I do.
You do? Do you?
No.
Why not?
I don't like the lines. I don't like waiting. If I need something, I'll just order it online. I'm not doing it to just spend money. I don't like
So
waiting in those lines.
You said that why is shopping sport? You know?
Yeah, some people like it. I don't, but
Yeah.
some people do.
So that's an example of materialism. It's like, I know for a lot of times, like there is a move or a thing, well, I'm bored, I'll go shopping. You know,
Right.
it's like, and so it's like buying things you don't need. That's a trend. And it is also, and we're encouraged to do it. You know,
Mhm.
all the marketing materials and everything encourages to do it. Then on the other hand, we have, well, we should be more ecologically friendly. We should consume less. And that's also a trend. So we have a lot of things that are happening. Sometimes they're in conflict, and it's hard to tell what the future is going to hold. Okay, here's some social trends that that I was just talking about. One, we tend to have more money and less time than we did in the past.
Mhm.
So if I have more money and less time, that means, well, when I go on vacation, I'm going to go somewhere nicer, maybe, but I'm going to stay less. But it's also things like I'm not going to wash my clothes. I'm going to pay a dry cleaner because I have time. I'm not going to spend my time off doing laundry. I want to do something fun. We are becoming more individual, which means I want to do a thing that I want to do. That I want a unique experience that is my experience. I don't want to go on a tour with a bunch of other people or ride in a tour bus and all of us take pictures of the same thing out the window. I want to go climb that mountain. I want to go, explore that cave. I want to go do that thing that is unique. We also want the same thing about self-improvement. We want that authentic experience. I don't want the touristy experience. I want the real experience of the area. The one here, seeking value for the money, everybody does this. When I'm going somewhere I've never been before, first thing I do, get on the internet, look for reviews, what other people have said. And so this leads to a real competition of value, because it's like, what if before the internet, you couldn't easily access and compare.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, now, I don't know about you, but if you're going out of town and if you're going to book a hotel, especially if I do this sometimes. I want a boutique hotel. I don't want to stay in a chain. I want to get a kind of a different experience. And the way I do it is I go online, and then it's like I look at pictures of the rooms, I look at reviews, and to find that thing. These tie into the interest in experiential things. We want to have that unique, special experience where I taste the authentic food. I meet the people that live there. I see the real clothes. I go to a real, performance, not something that they're doing for tourists. Safety is important. We live in a dangerous world, and we want to do that. The social and environmental concerns continue. And then, we want good service. We're willing to pay for good service, though. That it's not that we go to the cheapest experience. We want to go to the one that we get the best deal for our money. And the best deal for our money may mean I pay extra, but I get more service. I get more, if I'm not going to get the cheapest thing, I'm willing to pay more, but I want the thing that's good. Let's see. Some other changes, like I said, China, the US, and India are currently the richest countries in the world. And so those are the ones spending money. The world's population is getting older. And while this population is getting older, the average hotel employee is under 25. So we're seeing this spread. But on the other hand, while most of the employees are under 25, 75% of the world's wealth is held by people over 50. This is a scary number, but it's becoming, there's the issue of failure to launch, if you know what I mean. That unemployment rates amongst young people are higher than they have been historically.
Yeah.
And it shows up in all sorts of weird things, and part of it is as people live longer and are healthier longer. I make it to 65 and I don't want to retire. I'll work another 10 years. Well,
you're keeping that job from someone younger who's now 20 or something and needing a job.
Yeah, and they need an entry-level job. And so that is just, yes, we like the fact that we're going to live and be healthier longer, but as the economy hasn't quite adapted to it yet,
Right.
and I'm not saying that it won't, but I'm just saying that, you know, that we're in this transition period.
Mhm.
Other things, the emergence of a knowledge-based society. You know what that means?
Based like a society based off of what each person knows. I don't know if it makes any sense, but
what we're getting is, and we see this, like if you had a lot of jobs, tech jobs, it doesn't matter where you work or when you work. My wife has, you know, works for a company that's based in Iowa. They have offices all over the world. She lives in St. Simon's Island. She could live anywhere in the world she wants.
right.
She can make pretty much any schedule she wants as long as she gets her work done. And so and there are lots of companies that in this knowledge-based economy, tech companies tend to be, you know, that have things like unlimited time off. You know, that as long as you get your work done, you make your schedule.
Right.
That's a trend. And also, if you can live anywhere in the world because you're making a good living, where would you choose to live, Hannah? Like if you could be guaranteed you're going to make, I don't know, let's say you're going to get out of college, you make $100,000 a year to start. Where would you live?
Florida.
Florida? Okay.
Yeah. Ocala, Florida.
Ocala, Florida? But you know, like for that, you could pick New York, you could pick Seattle, you could pick Hawaii. You know, it's like you could be anywhere. And people like, you know, so what we get are in these economies, people live in beautiful places, which are the same places people go for vacation.
Right.
Let's see. I've talked about the experience economy. I've talked about demographic shifts. The Chinese elephant is that basically the Chinese economy is growing and getting bigger. And actually, depending on how you measure it, the Chinese economy is currently as large or larger than the US economy. And so they have more spending power. The diversity in a homogenous world. This basically is the idea that we're making it easier to travel. When you travel, if you can speak English, you can get pretty much anywhere in the world. You know, that there will be someone there in the hospitality industry that also speaks English. But within that, we also have the issue of diversity because we don't want to all be the same.
Right.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for the future of tourism. Now, I say that's pretty much it for the future of tourism. We could do like, it's going to change. It could be different tomorrow. I could talk about this all semester. But you know, these are some of the big trends that you guys need to be aware of. So Hannah, thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and I'll stop the recording now.